Welcome, Carole, from the Women's Bookshop on Ponsonby Road. What have you got for us this week?
A wonderful novel that's actually superbly written, but actually quite hard to read because it's grim in lots of ways. The 12 Tribes of Hattie by Ayana Mathis. Ayana Mathis is a first-time novelist. It's her debut novel. It's been receiving sensational reviews. I would liken it to Toni Morrison.
Wow.
Very like a young Toni Morrison.
Serious? Yeah. I mean, that is serious to be likened to Toni Morrison.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge compliment, but it's also, her work is serious in the same way that Toni Morrison's is. Basically, she's describing the movement of black people from the south, from Georgia in particular, this family comes from, up to the north and the west, and how moving north affected their whole lives. It was a migration, really.
What
so many
era
black
is it
people
set in?
moved. Well, it goes right through to modern times. It starts in 1925. So Hattie, the first chapter is Hattie giving birth to twins and bringing up those twins in the first chapter when they're small babies, when she's just a teenage girl, 1925, and she's very young. And at the end of that first chapter, I just had to close the book and put it down for a while because the twins die. They become ill and they die by the end of the first chapter. And it is so well written and so devastating that I just thought, oh, I just have to sit with this for a while.
Do I want to keep up with this one? Yes.
Oh, it then goes on. She then has a lot more children. And each chapter is one of Hattie's children. So the 12 tribes of Hattie, all these different children that she has. And they're adults. You see them as adults and how they have adapted to living in the north or failed to adapt. Most of them have led really difficult lives, and you just think, oh, please, can there be one child who in the end is, leads a good life? There's all sorts of trouble and difficulties and fallings out with Hattie. And Hattie was obviously a very tough mother, but had to be tough to keep those kids alive in a way. I mean, she keeps them alive by sheer will, really, and just feeding them was enough. She didn't have any energy or time left for love and games and fun, really. So it was quite a grim upbringing, and it's affected them all. And her relationships with all of those children are very affected. One becomes a sort of born-again preacher, and goes back down to the south and runs his own church. But she feels he isn't really a good man. I mean, he does it because he's good at it, but yeah, there are all sorts of problems with all of them. It ends with the final one is her daughter, who really has a mental illness and has a grandchild, and in the end you feel that Hattie reaches out and actually embraces the grandchild, and of all of them is going to save this one little girl. So it's tough.
Yes, so with that tough beginning, with the death of two babies, why do we get back to, does it go around in any circular way that we refer back to those
Yes, well, and
babies
it
again?
affects her whole life.
Right.
I mean, yes, they do.
So that's why
it comes
that
up.
grim bit's there.
Yeah, it affects her whole life. She has a very difficult relationship with her husband, who is a womanizer, and he goes off drinking and so on. But in the end, they stick together. You do know that she's had one relationship with another man that was quite lovely, but in fact one of her own daughters betrays her with that man much later, and people do terrible things to each other.
So given its tough subject matter, why should we come into your shop and buy this book?
Oh, because it's superbly written, and it feels so real. It feels so real. You just, I really loved it.
So really, despite the fact you have to brace yourself, highly recommended by the sound of it.
Yeah. I had to read it in stages, really. I'd put it down for a while and then read the next chapter about the next child, and take a breath before I went on to the next one. But
good
wonderful.
to have a challenging book now and again.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Carole Beu.